Hello, everybody. Today is Tuesday, November 25th. My name is Miloš Krajčnik. This is Canuck News. Just connecting a bit into yesterday's story. We talked about the trip to India, what it means, what kind of trade deals are going to be going on between Canada and India right now. And this is just giving more context because honestly the news is just kind of full of what's going on with this push east. So I thought I would follow up with another video on it, just to maybe bring a little bit more light. But what's interesting is we have the Liberals taking steps back, actually being a lot more conservative, because Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives have actually been saying all of the stuff that Carney is now doing, essentially. While Justin Trudeau was around, the Conservatives were actively saying, we don't need this many carbon tax credits. We need to push these oil pipelines. We need to be more responsible with the resources that we have and how we use them. Obviously, blackface Justin Trudeau didn't do any of those things. He literally just ran us into the ground. And now we have this new Liberal government, which again, I think is being forced into making these steps, partly because of the tariffs, but also partly because I think we just need the money from one side, from one aspect of it. We need the money to reach our NATO commitments. We need the money because I believe that the U.S. is actually pushing us to build up our military so that we can actually have an active role in protecting the North. And I'm going to do a story tomorrow on a little bit more military procurement and how this is all playing out within Asia. So let's get into it. I wanted to start off with this no more feminist foreign policy, because this is really the defining moment of the Liberals, at least under blackface Justin Trudeau, right, is being a feminist, being, diversity. I don't even know what it stands for, but just basically being gay. So this is what it's about, right? This is what the Liberals are all about, being extremely feminist, and all of that. And it's really just driven us into the ground. So what it says here is Prime Minister Mark Carney backing away from key international priority of his Liberal predecessors, say his government does not have a feminist foreign policy. What the hell does that even mean? We have a feminist foreign policy. It literally doesn't make sense. So blackface Justin Trudeau has literally just created this scenario within Canada in which anything that is said is so theatrical, nonsensical, that people have lived with it. They think it means something. It doesn't mean shit. This literally doesn't make sense. Having a feminist foreign policy doesn't make sense. That's what we lived with for a decade. It says cabinet ministers under former Prime Minister blackface Justin Trudeau announced in 2017 that their government had a feminist foreign policy, and they continued to refer to the policy for years after. Their support deepened further in 2020 when the government promised to draft a full document to define the policy. I would love to see how they define a feminist foreign policy, honestly. But despite years of backroom discussions by federal officials, no document was ever published, and now Mr. Carney is distancing himself away from the concept. Yeah, because you can't have a feminist foreign policy. It doesn't make sense. How would that actually look? Like, what? We're not gonna buy things from China. We're not gonna. Hey, Huawei, go away because you guys aren't feminist enough. Really? Because if it wasn't for Donald Trump, Huawei would be surveilling all of our phones right now, actively, all our bank accounts, because we're about to integrate their 5G networks across the country. So, where does this feminist foreign policy actually take place, right? Because no serious nation would actually do this to themselves, because it doesn't make any sense. So it says issues such as gender equality and reducing gender-based violence are an aspect of his government's foreign policy. He told a press conference on Sunday in Johannesburg, where he was attending a summit of the group of 20 leaders. So Carney is in South Africa right now. Obviously, he needs to pull back away from this supposed feminist foreign policy, because it doesn't make sense in the context in which you are, right? And so he's making this big international push for new trade deals. And the only place he could realistically be able to push something as stupid as a feminist foreign policy would be in the European Union, where nonsensical things like DEI are also actively taken hold, essentially, right? But nowhere else in the world does anyone actually give a shit about DEI and feminist foreign policy. And then, so we have Francois Philippe, given his own statement. So he said his statement, in sharp contrast to the many years of rhetoric from blackface Justin's foreign affairs minister, including Chrystia Freeland and Francois Philippe Champagne, who spoke often of Canada's feminist policies on international issues. Canada is proud to have a feminist foreign policy, not because it looks good, but because it produces tangible and measurable results, Mr. Champagne said in a speech in February 2020. The only thing that Canada's feminist foreign policy and Canada's feminist policy on anything has really done is just driven the country into the ground. There is nothing motivating about the Canadian economy right now, or Canadian society, to like, quite frankly, we've literally just driven ourselves into the ground. It's insane. And now that there's an actual article that needs to be written about someone not following through with blackface Justin's lunacy, I find insane. I actually find it insane. And so I wanted to, so the reason why I really wanted to dig into this is because they actually tie it to these business dealings in South Africa that Mark Carney is trying to do. So he's in the G20, he's in South Africa, and so look how the Globe and Mail portrays Donald Trump. He says, U.S. President Donald Trump boycotted the summit and refused to allow any of his top officials to attend after repeating his false allegations that South Africa is slaughtering its white minority. This is how you know you're living in a mass, mainstream media hellhole. I want you guys to watch this. This is a chant that was at a political rally in South Africa. Okay? And the Boers are the white people, right? The farmers. So they actually have a chant, kill the Boer, kill the farmer. This is a political rally.
This South African song has been igniting quite the firestorm online. Once deemed a struggle chant, modern adaptations of it have kindled cries of white genocide. So why is this song so controversial? Well, it's mostly to do with its lyrics.
Kill the Boer, the farmer!
That chant about killing the Boers, the descendants of Dutch settlers in South Africa. Dubulibunu, which translates to shoot the Boer, was born in the throes of apartheid-era South Africa in the early 90s. Apartheid, which is the Afrikaans word for separateness, was pretty popular among white voters who sought to preserve their dominance over South Africa's black majority. The chant had roots across the political spectrum and was brought back into the public sphere by politician Peter Mokaba after the African National Congress Youth League was reconstituted in 1991, when it grew into a rallying call against apartheid. Dubul Ibunu is one of a number of struggle songs, that is, political anthems that were a key part of the fight.
This gets political after, but they have an actual song about killing the Boers, killing white people, right? And obviously South Africa as a country has had its own struggles, internal struggles, because that white population obviously led the country politically for a very long time. It had a very significant role in stabilizing South Africa. When you look at all of the sub-Saharan African nations, compared to South Africa. South Africa is actually in the G20. All of the other ones are a catastrophe, essentially, right? So now they have a chant around killing the people. They're all farmers. So the Boers, the white population in South Africa, they're farmers. They're talking about killing the farmers. So the political rally is to kill the people that are feeding you, essentially, right? So this is phenomenal coming from the Globe and Mail, and the impact that they're trying to have. So let's not do any trade with South Africa at all, right? But here it says that Mark Carney is going to be actually traveling and having an actual African mission to increase some trade deals, do some nuclear cooperation with South Africa as well. We see it right here. And so there's a whole slew of things. And so this is exactly why you can't have a feminist foreign policy. If you want to diversify actually and have serious trade partners, you can't have something as stupid as a feminist foreign policy. You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense. And you can't do trade with India. You can't do trade then with China either. You can't do trade with most of the world if you have this idiocy called feminist foreign policy. And it's translated directly into the chaos that we have going on right now. I've spent too much time talking about this, but what we have here is, and this is why it's key. This is why he's pulling back. This is why he's acting more conservative. This is why the Liberal Party is acting more conservative, because they're actually pushing the oil pipeline now. They're going to lift the oil tanker ban. Why? Because it's of national security interests, right? That we have an actual oil pipeline that goes to the West Coast so that we can supply Asian markets with oil and gas and anything else that we need, right? Because as soon as you build up the transport terminals on the coastlines, we can start shipping a lot of things. So let's get into it. It says Prime Minister Mark Carney and Alberta Premier Danielle Smith are set to announce a memorandum of understanding on energy in Calgary on Thursday over the objections of BC Premier David Eby. It says Mr. Eby was caught off guard last week when the Globe and Mail reported that Ottawa and Alberta were close to concluding a wide-ranging framework on energy development, including a limited exemption on the existing ban on oil tanker traffic across the BC coast. So Eby's a loser. Basically, that's really what it comes down to. Eby is just a socialist loser. He said, like, there's nothing behind this man that is helping propel BC. Like, none of his NDP socialist policies are actually helping the province of British Columbia. And this is just another slew of things. And the reason why he doesn't need to be consulted, he's actually butthurt that he's not at the negotiating table, but he's a non-factor because he doesn't want to cooperate. And under the Constitution Act of Canada of 1867, the federal government can actually push infrastructure projects of national interest to override provincial governments. So if Ottawa wanted to, it could just basically, tell any provincial government, guys, this is happening, like it or not, So BC can't actually veto this, and this is a crucial thing that we really need to kind of understand, because the amount of back and forth that goes on between these provincial disputes, where Ottawa has been mediating, really doesn't have to exist if there's a defined national strategy at work, and we don't have one. And we're being reactionary to the reality that Canada's living in right now, instead of being proactive and actually trying to develop our country and our mineral resources and all of that in a responsible way for the benefit, obviously, of Canadians. So Mr. Eby said that there is little likelihood that any private sector company would be willing to invest in an oil pipeline to the West Coast. There's not a world in which the current price of oil, a private company is going to step up and pay for the pipeline across the north. He's crazy. He's crazy. Of course, everybody's gonna support a pipeline to the north because it's gonna be exporting to Asian markets that are starving for energy resources. They're starving for energy resources. And so he just makes up a whole bunch of new garbage. He says it's an incredible precarious shipping road. It is the reason why the ban on the oil tankers. Guys, he's just coming up with a whole bunch of nonsense. He's just coming up with a whole bunch of nonsense. I want to show you guys this because we'll just show you
another handshake between Alberta Premier Danielle Smith and Prime Minister Mark Carney is expected this week. And with that comes the conclusion of talks about a deal that sources say will set the framework for an oil pipeline from Alberta to the BC coast.
That is a work in process right now. I think we are getting close to a place, and when that gets done, we'll have some more clarity.
And that clarity should come soon. Sources say the signed memorandum of understanding is expected to push the pipeline project forward, which necessitates some kind of carve-out from the tanker ban. It's also likely to scrap the planned federal emissions cap, bolster carbon capture, and change the industrial carbon tax.
He's scrapping everything that blackface Justin did because this has to happen because we need new markets. It's a must. This has to happen. And this is why it's happening. And Eddie's a loser.
Many environmental groups say the costs aren't worth it.
Alberta wants a pipeline that's going to carry 1 million barrels per day. So that would mean considerable expansion of the oil sands. So that's a huge climate issue.
Ottawa has said it wants BC's.
That's all he has to say. That's all this climate activist has to say. We're going to be expanding the oil sands. It's a massive environmental issue. Buddy, no one cares. No one cares. Do you see? Has anyone ever seen those videos in the Middle East on like how they just burn like 10 million tons of like tires? They just put it in the desert. They throw like kerosene on it. They just let it light on fire. They don't even recycle it. They don't do anything with it. Like, and we're supposed to be all this big worrisome country, tax ourselves to oblivion so that we can uphold some kind of emissions capture garbage when nobody else is doing this. Like, literally nobody else is doing this.
Backing, but that province is unlikely to give it. Premier David Eby told Carney today it was unacceptable that BC has been excluded from the talks and that any agreement with Alberta requires First Nations approval and needs to limit the use of taxpayers' dollars in the construction of any prospective pipeline.
I explained all of those things. I asked that the Prime Minister incorporate those pieces into the agreement. He listened carefully, made no commitments on it. But I said at a minimum, coastal First Nations of British Columbia need to be at the table in these conversations about our province.
Alberta plans to leverage private sector capital and the Major Projects Office to try and get this pipeline built. Today, the Energy Minister told a committee that Ottawa will work with any proponent who has the support of First Nations, Omar, and the local jurisdiction.
So you saw it yourself. He's a loser. I wasn't at the table, guys. But I told the Prime Minister that at the very least the coastal First Nations people need to be at the table. In what capacity? In what capacity are the First Nations people going to be at the table for? Are they investing in the pipeline? Are they, maybe if they're going to be like workers, if the federal government is going to be employing like a whole reserve, I don't know however many there are, up in northern BC. If they're going to be employees, then maybe that makes sense, right? But if they're not, then it's like, why would you bring these people, like this group, who has an overall just overriding negative opinion of anything that the federal government ever does? Why would you bring them to the table? They're like, you're more likely to be to just create more problems for yourself. You know what I mean? On a national level, that's kind of the way that, this should really move forward. they should maybe employ them so that, you know, they don't actually create more problems than there should be. But I've never heard of a First Nations group not complain about the environment. It's like they're the biggest Green Party enthusiasts in the country. It's insane. But this is another reason. This is another reason why, you know, we're not doing feminist foreign policy anymore. This is another reason why we're scrapping all of those carbon capture, all that garbage that's been forced down our throats. It's because Canada's announcing more trade with India. And obviously we wouldn't be able to do this if we had a feminine foreign policy and if we had all of those carbon credits and all that garbage attached to this, because obviously we wouldn't be competitive in selling anything energy related if we were shooting ourselves in the foot actively as we were. And so there's a new deal. The export deal will be worth about $2.8 billion, almost $3 billion. Two sources familiar with the negotiations say, and its term could run for 10 years. The uranium would be supplied by Canada's Camco, and the export deal could be part of a broader nuclear cooperation effort between Canada and India. That's great. We're actually really good with nuclear technology in Canada. I'm not a proponent of like knowledge sharing of nuclear technology with India, because, you know, Canada has to keep its own competitive advantage and all of that. But we are actually very good at this, and it is a very, let's say, competitive advantage that we have. So they're looking to pursue what they're calling a comprehensive economic partnership, restarting trade talks that have been shelved for 2 years. So that's since the murder of since the assassination of the one Khalistani activist that we talked about. But see, it's interesting. Here it is. So it goes, Canada banned exports of uranium and nuclear hardware to India in the 1970s after New Delhi used Canadian technology to develop nuclear weapons. And so this is interesting. We completely stopped trading nuclear with them in the 1970s because the Indians were like, you know what, we don't really care what anybody does, what anybody says. We're going to build a nuke so that we're a nuclear superpower and nobody touches us. No one can manipulate us again. Why? Because they had a devastating breakup with Pakistan. They just basically got independence from the UK, from Great Britain, not too long ago. They had this history of being used and abused, right? And one amazing way of not being used and abused ever is by having a nuclear weapon. That's just quite simply the way it works. No one really ever wants to touch you if you have a nuke, right? And so they built it, and we didn't sell nuclear hardware to them since the 70s because of it, right? But the Indians didn't care because they found other places to buy. They bought it from the Soviet Union. They bought it from, you know, wherever they could find it. They bought that. They bought uranium from, right? So it's amazing at let's say the long-term vision that they had, right? This is a national strategic interest for us to have a nuke. We're going to build it, even if it means completely souring relations with Canada, who in the 70s was a major player on the global stage, right? This is all I have for us today, guys. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Please like, share, and subscribe. My name is Miloš Krajčnik. Stay curious, stay informed.
This is Canada. Maple syrup and like Captain Say. Kick your ass all hockey season.